Since the beginning of my political career, so since 25 years, I'm supporting the Balkan region and the ex-Yugoslav states in their accession appreciations towards the European Union. I did this in my capacity as part of the Austrian Green Foundation for many years, as part of the European Green Party, and now since 8 years here in European Parliament, as part of several delegations to the accession countries in the Western Balkans. I've been serving in the Serbian one, in the Albanian one, in Bosnia, Kosovo, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. So basically in all of the remaining countries, delegations that are not yet part of the European Union. And knowing the Balkans quite well, I'm aware that identity politics is one of the most heated and most emotionalized topics that you can debate in the Balkans. Even the wars in the 90s on Balkans were fought on ethnicity and identity questions. So it's a very heated debate. Now, since 8 years here in the European Parliament, I'm actively engaging. And in this mandate, I got the offer, you might say, that I can serve as the rapporteur for the North Macedonian report. The North Macedonia report is the Parliament's report on the state of play when it comes to the accession to the European Union of, in this case, North Macedonia. So it's a report talking about reforms that have happened, but also reforms that are still needed, about rule of law, about civil society, about infrastructure, about like everything that is concerning the EU accession path. And this report is drafted here in the European Parliament always by one member of the delegation. This is the so-called rapporteur. He or she is in charge to draft this proposal, and then every political family nominates a negotiator, and then all these negotiators sit together and negotiate a draft report together. So it's basically about building compromises. The role is basically to include the different standpoints and to create a balanced and comprehensive report upon the country. It was clear from the very first moment on when I accepted to become rapporteur for North Macedonia that this is going to be a bumpy road, a rough sail, because unfortunately since 2022 the Parliament did not manage to actually decide on a report, because bilateral issues in earlier years between North Macedonia and Greece, now in the last years between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. So these bilateral issues have been massively overshadowing the work of the European Parliament in the past years. So I tried, together with my shadow rapporteurs from all political families, to negotiate a report that is covering all the different perspectives and that also finds neutral and easygoing formulation when it comes to the recognition of the statehood of North Macedonia and its language. And yes, usually we might say, or you might say, that why is that actually needed in such a report? And yes, usually it is not needed, because why do I, from the European Union or European Parliament side, need to acknowledge the statehood of North Macedonia? It's an accession country since 20 years. And yes, they're a negotiating partner. Yes, absolutely clear that we're acknowledging North Macedonia as an independent country. But unfortunately, by at least big parts of the Bulgarian political spectrum, this identity is in question. You could read it in a letter just recently signed by actually all Bulgarian members of European Parliament, where they talk about a contested identity question. And unfortunately, in this reality, there was a need to mention the acknowledgement of identity and language, and these amendments, so these wishes, were expressed by 4 political groups here in the House, by members of the European People's Party, Social Democrats, Renew, which is the Liberals, and the Greens. So this formulation also found its way into the draft report. But unfortunately, this was the beginning of a smear campaign, of an attack campaign, of a political campaign that grew into dimensions that I have not expected. Into a political campaign that firstly tried to push me to insert changes in some backdoor deals into the report. A campaign that then, when it became obvious that I'm not ready to do any backdoor deals and that I'm open for any democratic decision, but I'm not ready to change text based on the pressure of local or regional governments or members of European Parliament from one country, which is Bulgaria in this case. So I was refraining from doing these backdoor deals, which caused quite a smear campaign against myself. I was accused of being corrupted by some tailor-made suits from Skopje, which is actually really ridiculous, because whoever Googles me finds a trillion of pictures of me. Not a single one was a suit, because I usually wear traditional Austrian clothing and I don't wear suits usually. So it's a very ridiculous claim. I was called biased because I have been talking to 31 interlocutors from North Macedonia and only to 5 related to Bulgaria, while I don't know what the content of this accusation shall be, because my job and my role was and is to write a report on North Macedonia's state of play and state of accession reforms. And not about Bulgaria, and not about the bilateral relations between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. So sure, I was talking mainly to North Macedonian interlocutors, politicians, diplomats, journalists, civil society actors, academia, so the whole spectrum of society. So these accusations were also going into nowhere. I was announced to the Code of Conduct Crimea here in the European Parliament with absolutely unfounded accusations, which were also rejected by the presidency of the European Parliament. I was accused on being biased and one-sided, which were clearly this was clearly rejected as an example by the chair of the Foreign Policy Committee, so AFET Committee, David McAllister. I mean, you know, we work here in good, trustworthy relations when it comes to foreign policy since many, many years. And so my colleagues know me, and they respect me, and they value the work I'm doing here in the House. I was, and then what happened was another step of escalation, because when Bulgarian MEPs realized that they cannot force me or others to follow their specific wishes on questioning the identity and language of North Macedonia, they actually accelerated their campaign against me. And maybe at this point I need to explain what the underlying problem is. And I mean, it starts that after the Second World War, all these states came under communist rule, and neither Bulgaria nor then the state of Yugoslavia had any interest to talk about the history of the states and the conflicts of the past. It was all mainly hidden under the carpet, so reconciliation never happened. Acknowledgement of atrocities that happened on both sides never happened. Apologies for the wrongdoings of the past never happened. So both of the countries never really invested into clearing their history and clearing their good neighborly relations, not just between each other, but this is a common problem in the region. And yes, it's a matter of fact that Bulgaria was aligned with the fascists, and luckily their wrongdoings were by far not going as far as German and Austrian actors did. But still, there were a lot of atrocities that happened, while the citizens that live in today's North Macedonia, back then members of the state of Yugoslavia, were on the other side of the war. They were on the side of the partisans, of the fighters that fought against fascism. And this history actually was never worked at. And today, Bulgarians are not admitting that they were part of the fascist alliance, and are still claiming that the citizens of North Macedonia are actually Bulgarians, and their language is actually a Bulgarian dialect, and it's only Tito that has brainwashed these people, so they think they're something different now. So yes, parts of the Bulgarian political spectrum are actively questioning the identity and also the independent language of North Macedonia. And this also causes counter-reactions in North Macedonian government, as an example, that also fuels this kind of identity conflict. So it has been escalated to a point where my personal phone number was circulated in Telegram chats of extreme right groups, in Facebook groups, extreme right Facebook groups, which resulted into hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails and phone calls and postings and public statements threatening me, attacking me. The mildest ones were just calling me an idiot or biased, but it went all the way to active death threats, like we're gonna find you, we're gonna hunt you down, you're not gonna be safe anywhere. So like direct threats to my life, and this is a level of escalation which is totally unacceptable. It needs to be accepted that sometimes in democracy, politicians or also journalists, civil society actors or citizens are voicing opinions that are very hard to take and that I do not sign up to, not at all. But threatening each other's lives is going beyond everything that is acceptable. And yes, sure, I mean, this is a criminal court case now, and this is the agencies were notified, and the presidency was notified on what was going on. But to try to push through a certain political agenda with these kind of tools is something that we in the European Parliament, in the European Union, we cannot accept, because if this becomes a role model on how we're doing politics with each other, that has the potential to actually destroy our European Union, because our European Union is built on us talking to each other, us raising mutual understanding for different standpoints, of us finding compromises. But compromises are always based on mutual respect between each other, because otherwise you cannot build compromises if you do not basically respect each other. So this was going far beyond everything that is acceptable, and then it even influenced the decision-making processes here in the House. The negotiations went very well, and there was a very close cooperation between European People's Party negotiator, the negotiators of Social Democrats, Liberals, myself. Also the left was partly contributing. Even ECR and their member seemed to be more or less constructive in the process up to a certain point. So we had a compromise which was, I would say, covering all the standpoints, and we had a clear majority and a clear deal also to vote in favor of this report. And 14 hours before the actual vote in the Foreign Policy Committee, the leader of the conservative group here in the House, Mr. Manfred Weber, changed his mind. And he changed his mind towards not anymore supporting the file, if not an additional word is inserted. And this word is just the word modern. And you might say, well, okay, then put the word modern, who cares? Yes, indeed, if this would be a report on Austria and it would say, well, we're talking about modern Austria, yeah, fine. We're not talking about the monarchy Austria, and we're not talking about Nazi times Austria. We're talking about modern Austria. This is not loaded with emotions or identity politics. But in the Bulgarian and North Macedonian case, it meant it's reducing the acknowledgement and respect for identity and language to today's identity and language, more or less saying, well, historically they're Bulgarians, but somehow they ended up in an independent state, and somehow they seem to have a bit of a different language than Bulgarian. So yes, today something like this exists, but historically it's actually all Bulgaria. And through the fact that this is emotionally so loaded, this whole amendment was emotionally so loaded. I then asked for a postponement of the vote because it was clear that this is not going to go in a good direction. And then finding out how it came that Mr. Weber changed his mind. Well, there were direct calls by the Bulgarian Prime Minister, not just on Mr. Weber, also on other important personalities in the European Union, putting pressure on the European Parliament and the European Commission, more or less claiming that the process that happened at the same time, so the accession of Bulgaria to the Eurozone, might not be a success because we decide on this report on North Macedonia and because it would include this mentioning of recognition of identity and language. And that caused quite some worries here in the House. Even though everybody knew that this is a made-up argument, still no one really wanted to be made responsible by the Bulgarian government for any disruptions which they had back home by far-right parties. Oh, it's the same far-right actors that started the smear campaign against me. It's anti-European forces. Some of them are clearly driven by Russian interests and are under Russian influence. At least this is how it looks to me. And so we're postponing this vote based on the pressure of the Bulgarian government. But the postponement didn't solve the problem. The postponement just postponed the problem. So we went all the way to the vote in AFET. Just 2 weeks later, well, same problem. There was a certain agreement to include this word modern, which would have been seriously harmful also for the relations with North Macedonia. It would have been a certain contradiction to the actual meaning of the report. And this vote did not happen because more than 5 members of the European Parliament stood up against this oral amendment. So we went into plenary, and there the conclusion was, well, before we go into even more conflicts around this recognition of identity and language, let's just delete it at all. In a way, this is what Bulgarians partly wanted. They wanted no mentioning of recognition and identity and language. And I find this very regrettable that, first of all, we need to have this sentence in there, and secondly, that we're deleting it now. I mean, what does that say about our mutual respect towards North Macedonia? But under the massive pressure, I mean, even the president of Bulgaria, Mr. Radev, wrote a letter to von der Leyen, our commission president, and Mr. Kostas, the council president, accusing me personally of being biased. So the amount of intervention was unseen here. And then at the end, in plenary, a majority of members, following the group's advice, most of the members didn't know why this is an issue at all, following their group's advice, deleted all the sentences that were related to recognition of language and identity. And this is then the democratic outcome. Still, we have a report. It's the first one since 2022. The main aim of some right-wing actors here in the House to prevent me of doing a report and to prevent the Parliament of doing a report at all failed. The deletion of recognition of identity and language did not fail. Unfortunately, big parts of the European Parliament, and especially the leadership, was giving in to the, I would say, senseless identity-driven interventions by one single member state, and this is not doing a good. This is not a good job. Also, when it comes to the future role of European Parliament, we need to defend European interests, our common interests, and not bilateral identity issues between 2 member states. That's something they have to solve themselves. And I'm getting asked, will I do it again? Do I regret that I did this job? I don't regret anything here. I'm doing this for the population of North Macedonia and for the population of Western Balkans. These states have been the playground of foreign powers for ages, and they should take their own destiny into their own hands. And with this, I will support them also in the future.